It's Rog and America. This is the summer of football, the Copa Europa Palooza 2024, like a worldwide footballing music festival, but with less floral headbands and a little more hydration. And as I've said before, we as a nation are about to find out how much Lallas is too much Lallas, as both the Euros by day and the Copa by night are on Fox. This show will tell you all you need to know to revel in the latter. The Copa America's arrived on these shores. Football's rightful home, the good old US of A. 32 games, 25 days, 14 different cities across this great land of ours, all leading up to the July 14th championship in the city that Lionel Messi built, Miami, Florida. And this year, 16 teams will compete for the trophy, which all comers will seek to pry from the vice-like grip of defending champions Argentina, led by the greatest thing to happen to the aforementioned Miami since Don Johnson wore dress shoes without socks for the very first time, the one and only, Lionel. So we are here, our barefoot toes wiggling in our loafers with excitement, to begin our 2024 Copa America coverage with this three-part preview series presented by Dove Men+Care. I love me some Dove. I'll let you in on everything and anything you need to know to truly prepare yourself for this month of footballing dramatics that lie ahead. Don't worry, Bolivia superfans. We'll touch on every team in this tournament over the course of these 3 episodes, even your La Verde. But to start, we're deep diving into the team that puts the America in Copa America. It's our very own Gen Zeagles, the US men's national team. And I'm not alone. Here to break it all down with me is a gent who knows a thing or two about United States soccer, played for them 24 times, a bloke who prefers his football played in blizzard-like conditions, a gent who's CONCACAF in human form, and I mean that in only the most complimentary ways. It is a joy to welcome back from Vamos and ESPN, it's the mighty Herculez Gomez.
Raj, how you doing, my man? I can't believe Alexi Lalas got an intro before I did here. What's going on?
It's the law now in America. Lalas gets introduced before anybody at any time, in any setting, and I'm just a legally obliging great American. But first things first, big picture. Copa, historically, South America's answer to the Euros continental tournament for footballing supremacy. In the United States, why? Playing a South American Cup here? Well, despite what you think, the tournament organisers didn't fail their geography finals. 10 South American teams in CONMEBOL, that's South America's Footballing Association, and they've historically invited teams outside the continent to expand the field. Countries like Mexico, who've played there 10 times since 1993, Costa Rica, 5-time participants, and who could forget obvious choices like Japan and Qatar, who crop up everywhere. This will be the United States' 5th crack at the best Copa since Cabana, with the most recent coming in 2016 when the games were held again here on our shores. Herc, you played for the US squad in the 2007 Copa. I think we got drubbed 3 times, finished last in the group stage. So you know this gauntlet firsthand. What is unique about the tenors of this particular competition that make it so different and beloved?
The history, especially for us who are in CONCACAF, who kind of lack that history. We got our first continental championship, if you will, I believe in the 80s. That's when there was the US Cup, and then it became the Gold Cup, whatever you want to call it. This has history. This has tradition. You've seen rich footballers participate, whether it's Pelé, Maradona. By the way, neither of the two could win this tournament. That's how difficult it is to win this tournament. 2 greats like Pelé and Maradona, who have won the World Cup, couldn't win Copa America for the longest time. Lionel Messi, it eluded him. He actually won the Copa America before he won the World Cup, and it kind of got Argentina steamrolling to what they are today. But it's how prestigious it is and how difficult it is. Mine was in Venezuela. And I still recall when the U.S. men's national team went. That was my first taste in a U.S. men's national team shirt. With all due respect to some of the players who get a debut versus Panama or Cuba or Antigua, mine came against Argentina. And it's one thing to be thrown out there on the field in a cricket field or in Orlando. I was thrown out there in a Copa America with Diego Armando Maradona in the stands. And the atmosphere of playing Messi Crespo, Riquelme, Tevez, Heinze, Mascherano, like a ridiculously stacked team. By the way, who did not win that Copa? It was Brazil. But it just goes to show you, like, being there, you could feel that you're in the presence of not only history, but greatness. It really is something special.
Last time the United States played, 2016, also hosting. Team won their group, made it all the way to the semi-finals, where they played the South American big boys. Brad Guzan against Lionel Messi's Argentina. Well, there could only be one winner. I think that game ended in a 4-0 beatdown. I recently spoke with Tyler Adams on the captain. A lovely show that Tyler's created over here at MIB World Headquarters. It was quite an honest conversation. I'd urge our listeners to take in the whole thing. But he admitted that the United States doesn't get enough opportunities to play against big opponents in meaningful games. We feast on the almost empty calories provided by CONCACAF. And we saw these two warm-up games against Colombia and Brazil, that 5-1 beatdown that Colombia doled out that caused Gregg Berhalter to declare that the team showed, quote, a lack of respect to the game of soccer. And then the rebound against Brazil, a 1-1, almost a 1-1 victory that was played with a collective intensity and a defensive robustness that had almost been wholly absent in the game before. Herc, these are only friendlies. We don't read too much into friendlies, but I've got to ask you, which one was the real US men's national team? Or is the answer, unfortunately, both?
I don't think it's both. And I'd like to think Colombia, and listen, I've been very hard and critical on Gregg Berhalter, but Colombia wasn't on Gregg Berhalter. Gregg Berhalter's not creating these schoolboy errors. Gregg Berhalter's not trying to dribble out of the back. Gregg Berhalter's not deflecting shots. Gregg Berhalter's not, putting his hands out and missing the ball when he tries to catch it. These are errors that these individual players made. Now, the setup, we could talk about that, but I don't think it was necessarily wrong. We've been asking this U.S. men's national team to be a little bit more pragmatic in their approach for the longest time. They were, but these individual errors cost them. If it was a 3-1 game, Raj, I'm okay with it, and I'd say, Colombia was by far the better team. Colombia, by the way, is one of the best teams in the world right now, certainly one of the hottest teams in the world. So I have no issue with the scoreline, but the 5-1 didn't reflect what really happened. And I mean that because you take away these individual errors and opponents will make you or force you into errors, but this game got away from them. So I've not seen the U.S. men's national team have a game where there were so many sloppy mistakes, individual mistakes from high-profile players. And we can get into those if you'd like or not. But Brazil was different. Brazil was a collective effort. It was pragmatic when they needed to be pragmatic, but they played through Brazil. Do not confuse being pragmatic defensively in your setup to how you construct, how you build out with the ball. They were pragmatic in their approach of how they defended. It was mid-block, but it was 25, 30 yards compact, eliminating the lines for Brazil to play through, essentially saying Brazil's midfield is not good enough to play through us, which was right. They were very right. Gregg Berhalter was very right in that one. But the way they built out from the back, whether it was with Matt Turner or out wide or through Gio Reyna, and how much those guys like Gio Reyna, Ricardo Pepi, who are maybe a little bit more involved on the ball and couldn't be here. They had to dig deep and roll up the sleeves. I thought it was brilliantly done. You have to give these players credit for executing. You have to give Gregg Berhalter credit for the game plan. And even though there was one individual mistake, and I would say probably a few individual mistakes in this game that led to that goal, the goal against Matt Turner, the resolve was there in a way that we've not seen from this U.S. men's national team. So to answer your question, it's somewhere in between, Raj. It's somewhere in between the Colombia game and the Brazil game. But certainly, having this type of game leading up to a major tournament is going to give you confidence.
The resolve, the mentality, that was the fundamental difference between the two games for me. And we all yearn so much for these boys to do well. It is so crucial to the growth of the game in the United States that these boys go on some kind of a run to grab the attention, the hearts, the minds of that wider United States sporting audience who are yet to be turned on to them. But Bruce Arena, who I've come to actually realise more and more is just the Neil Warnock of American football. He recently went full footballing Charles Barkley, and he declared that the 2002 US squad would beat this 2024 Gen Zeagles team. And he added, we need guys that can compete, that are fighting for 90 minutes on the field. We need some tougher guys. Pointed to players like Clint Dempsey, who's got that Nagadoches-sized chip on his shoulder. But Herc, I'm not going to make you answer the real question that we should, which is whether 2002 Gregg Berhalter would crack 2024 Berhalter's squad. But that one actually takes you through a hole in time and will melt your brain. But you played alongside so many of these players in the 2002 squad. Your Dempseys, Donovans, McBrides. Now, that team didn't hit maybe the individual club heights that this version already has. But our Dove Men+Care performance player to watch is one, Christian Pulisic. And he's as happy and healthy as though he just used Dove Men+Care's extra fresh body and face wash himself. Yes, he plays like a man powered by the potent combination of espresso and Panzerotti and proximity until recently to Olivier Giroud's beard. Played the best football of his career with AC Milan. Earning a nomination for a spot in the Serie A Team of the Year. Tyler Adams coming back after that lengthy hamstring injury that left him out for almost a full year. Weston McKennie, Tim Weah, both arriving at US camp after becoming fluent in Italian hand gesticulations and playing meaningful minutes for Juventus. Chris Richards, a joy, a stalwart in the Crystal Palace backline. I mean, I could go on and on and on. These are very good footballers. And I talked about this with Daryl DK in our post-match conversation in the wake of the Brazil game. I loved the minute when Pulisic took out Rafinha, I think 5 minutes into the game, as if to tell him, hey, we are here for a fight. We are not going to back down. We will not be intimidated. So is Bruce Arena kind of bellowing a classic old man yells at cloud take? Or is his team missing some of that, you don't know where I'm from, dog, shouting into an astonished opponent's face?
Let me unpack this because this is a loaded question and there's so much to unpack here. Bruce Arena's 2002 World Cup run, to this day, is the best run the U.S. has ever had in the World Cup. In modern day history, sure, you had a third place finish back in the 30s when there was like 8 teams, something like that.
We don't talk about that enough,
right? But this right here, let me tell you how fine the margins are at the highest of levels, Raj. That 2002 team shocked the world, shocked Portugal, Portugal's golden generation at the time, the Portugal team that was supposed to win a World Cup at some point that ended up failing and never reaching the heights that they could have, especially with the players they had, Rui Costa and some of those guys on the team. They shocked that team and they won very well. To go on to tie the host nation in a 1-1 game where it's Clint Mathis with the golazo, one of the best goals you'll ever see in a U.S. men's national team shirt, to shit the bed against Poland. They literally lost 3-1 to Poland, and it put them behind the 8 ball, and they're out of the World Cup. They're not going on to the next group phase if it wasn't for South Korea giving it to Portugal. And people forget this. They went 1-1 and made it to the next round thanks to South Korea. And then they played Mexico in what today is still considered the worst ever defeat in World Cup history for a Mexican national team in the most famous of dos aceros. So the margins are so thin. They were out of that World Cup if not for South Korea. And here you have Bruce Arena telling you how great that team was. So take that for what it is with a grain of salt. But he does have a point when he says that maybe the mentality here is what they don't have because they've never needed it because this pool of players is so damn good. They are individually at the club level, levels above any team we've ever had, any pool of players we've ever had on paper. It's not my personal opinion. Look at where these players play. It's very simple. But you're right. When Christian Pulisic goes and kicks Rafinha, the camera cuts away just as Pulisic's getting in his face, and I see Timothy Weah run over. I see Weston McKennie run over. These guys are there to back up their teammate. I've questioned Gregg Berhalter in the past and how I thought this team mentally was a reflection of their manager, soft. They weren't that yesterday. They bullied a Brazil team yesterday. Sure, Brazil had their chances individually because you've got a Ballon d'Or type of player in Vini Jr. You've got Rafinha, who plays at Barcelona. You've got Rodrigo, who just won a Champions League. You've got Endrick, a generational talent coming off the bench. You have individual talent that's going to make things difficult. But I saw resolve. I saw mentality. So I don't know if Bruce Arena's correct when he says that 2002 team would give it to this pool of players. I don't think that's the case.
Yes, but Clint Mattis's Mohawk, ... Look, our players, we are, and we should be so bloody proud of them. The starting 11 for Colombia, first time in our nation's history, ever to all play for top 5 leagues in Europe. So we need to talk about one other man in the spotlight. One gent who is to sneakers what Jean-Pierre Gasparini is to dad jeans. The man who Chris Paul studies to perfect his bounce passes. It's the US manager. You mentioned him, Gregg Berhalter, tactical leader of this operation. We all know his story by now. Round of 16, exit at the 2022 World Cup, followed quickly by the Reina family ugliness that led to his contract expiring, ultimate rehiring last summer. But big picture, this will be Berhalter's first major tournament since that World Cup that started with so much promise and ended in just a dark stain for everyone who loves the game of football in this nation. This is a man who's eternally on the Twitter hot seat in this second spell. People who love him would say he's got a 42-13-15 record as US manager. Others, his detractors, would say yes, but just a 7% win percentage against top 20 teams not named Mexico. The reality is he's only had 8 wins in 23 games against opponents outside of CONCACAF. Called the Brazil draw, and this was smart for him to do it. He called it a little step, not a huge step, but a little step. The 2026 World Cup is fast approaching. I think we hit the 2-year to go mark yesterday. What are the stakes here for Gregg in this tournament? Is this just a World Cup dry run? Or could what happens in the Copa América actually impact whether we will or won't be on the sidelines come 2026?
If things go sour, if things go bad, there's a real possibility the U.S. Federation analyzes Gregg Berhalter moving forward. It's very realistic. You mentioned earlier, speaking to Tyler Adams, about how important these games are because you don't get a lot of them. I think that number, that win percentage, is inflated because you're not playing the type of opponents that you used to play against in the past. Jurgen Klinsmann, whether he was loved or hated, right or wrong, that generation of players would play Italy, the Netherlands, would play Belgium, would play Germany, in Europe. They would play quality opponents, and because of the creation of the Nations League, the European Nations League and the CONCACAF Nations League, you can't go out and get that type of opponent. They're not available to you. World Cup qualifying in South America makes it very difficult. The Asian qualifiers, whatever the case may be, with the congestion of the calendar, you are limited to only playing in your region, and sometimes when it's out of your region, not the best type of competition. So I think those numbers are inflated. So Gregg Berhalter desperately needed a showing like this. Copa America is a different animal. It's a different beast. I don't think Gregg Berhalter and this U.S. men's national team bowing out against a Colombia or Brazil affects Gregg Berhalter. I do think Gregg Berhalter getting grouped affects Gregg Berhalter.
Is that the term? Is that the state-of-the-art term, getting grouped? You've been grouped.
Getting grouped as in not making out of your group.
God, I didn't even know the term until now. It is so unbearably humiliating. My whole life I've been grouped, but this is not about me. Let's break down the specifics of this United States squad, and then we'll delve into the opponents who loom. And there's no better place to start than at the top, where the striker position is a perpetual hole that needs filling, perpetually filled with hope. But the competition for this spot remains wide open. News broke last week that our sweet ginger prince, Josh Sargent, has got a foot injury, a lingering foot injury, may miss the entire Copa America, which would be a devastating blow for a gent who tore up the championship with Norwich City this past season, scored 16 times, 1 point down the back stretch. These were big goals for that team. And while we're wishing the Red Canary an incredibly quick recovery, can't wait to see him out there again. Him aside, That still leaves the best mashup of Brooklyn and London since Pop Smoke, Monaco's own Flo Balogun, who's admittedly struggled at times this season in Liga. I think he scored only 7 goals with a slew of missed penalties. I think it was off an XG of 11. But he may be the latest to just benefit from the comforts of trans fats and high fructose corn syrup this side of the Atlantic, which so many American players find this team to be a haven in which they regain their form. There's also my favourite, the El Paso Dutchman. And no, that's not a 3,000 calorie Texas gas station hamburger. It's PSV, Phenom, Ricardo Pepi. The gent who's got a real nose for goal. He's almost like a clinical footballing bloodhound. 7 goals in only 484 minutes in Eredivisie this season. You have the hot hand king, Coventry's Haji Wright. What a story. What a human being. Powered the Sky Blues to an FA Cup semi-final berth. Herc, you've got Flo, you've got Pepe, seemingly rotating in that position in the Colombia and Brazil friendlies. No one appears yet to have locked their name into the starting spot. You are a striker. Enlighten us. 2 questions connected. Who should Triple G give the bulk of the minutes to when the lights come up at AT&T Stadium against Bolivia June 23rd? And who will he?
Who should he? He should give it to Haji Wright. Haji Wright's proven when he's played with the U.S. men's national team to be that man. Do not forget that this team, Gregg Berhalter and the U.S. men's national team, were 30 seconds away from heading home in the semifinal of the CONCACAF Nations League, if not for Haji Wright. There was an own goal that went in, and then Haji Wright takes over. This is what happened for them to beat Mexico, to go on to that final. Haji Wright saved the day for him. Haji Wright is in great form. Haji Wright played against Colombia, completely changed the game when he came on. It may have not gone in their favor, but he was a difference maker when he played, and playing from a wide position, but coming in centrally as a second 9, he just makes things happen on the field. Who will play? Unfortunately, if you take a look at Gregg Berhalter's trajectory with the 9s, we've gone from Jesus Ferreira to Jordan Pifak to Josh Sargent to Haji Wright to Folarin Balogun to Ricardo Pepi. Daryl Dike has been in the mix. There's been so many different players in this mix. And I've come to the conclusion, and he said it so himself, so it's not really a surprise, or shouldn't be a surprise to me. It's about the profile of striker of who will play. And I got to thinking last night of why he went with Ricardo Pepi. Why did Ricardo Pepi start against Brazil? And the simple reason is because Ricardo Pepi is going to give you an honest effort on the defensive end, where maybe a Haji Wright won't, where maybe a Folarin Balogun won't. And by the way, Josh Sargent, who is injured, unfortunately, wouldn't be able to do that for you. So he's the most honest worker of the 3 that are available, which is why he played, because he knows that the 9 for him, the 9 for Gregg Berhalter, isn't there to push the ball in the back of the net. He's there to facilitate the wingers, the goal-scoring threats. So because of this, unfortunately, why I think it should be Haji Wright today, we're going to see a by-committee, by-profile type of 9.
One gent, we'd be remiss not to talk about a bloke who seemingly nutmegged his way across the Netherlands this season, just so he could post his highlights on his own IG. Serginho Dest, truly remarkable for PSV at times this season. Might have been the best fullback in Eredivisie, but a heartbreaking ACL tear in training will keep him sidelined for the summer and into next year, which leaves a hole in the US backline. Not just that Serginho was playing the best football of his career, but this being the United States, pretty well every player spent some time at fullback at some point or another. A whole team of stopgap right backs in a way. But the other traditional right backs include Borussia Mönchengladbach and Long Island's own, the Scally Cat himself, Joe Scally, Nashville SC's Shaq Moore. Recently, talking about replacing Dest, Shaq Moore said, "I'm not trying to replace him, I'm just trying to be the best Shaq that I can be," which sounds like some fantastic line that hit the editing floor in my favourite movie, Kazam. But the honest truth is, defensively, the other big question, and this one pains me because I love the man, is Matt Turner's place in goal. After conceding 28 goals in 17 games this season for Nottingham Forest, it's been a hard year for our US number 1. And in the warm-up games, there were moments in which his decision-making and his confidence, to be candid, appears to have taken a dent. Herc, Matt is a bloke who throughout his career has responded to adversity like few others with grit and tenacity. And in the game against Brazil, his misclearance handed the opponents their goal. I honestly feared for him, but then he just stepped up and unfolded a transcendent 11-save night. We so badly need a repeat of the second half Matt Turner in opening round play, right?
I have to give Matt Turner a lot of credit. It is not easy to be at fault for another mistake and to come back with that type of performance. I tweeted out that sans the goal that was given up, that mistake, he was brilliant. He really was. If not for that goal, he would be the best player on that field. We would be talking Casey Keller-like performance, which, by the way, was the last time the U.S. men's national team, the only time they've ever won against Brazil, was off of Casey Keller and those heroics. Till this day...
10 saves.
Yeah, till this day, Romario, the great Romario, said the best goalkeeping performance he's ever seen in his life. That type of performance is what Matt Turner gave us. It's not easy. It's not easy being at fault, Raj. It's not easy knowing that you're the goalkeeper, and if you make a mistake 9 times out of 10, no, 99 out of 100, it ends up in your goal. It ends up as a goal against. Now, Matt Turner underhit that ball. First mistake. Play out. You were having a lot of success playing out, but there were 2 other mistakes that happened after that. The Weston McKennie reaction, the Yunus Musa reaction, Yunus Musa raising his hands, not covering the lane. Can you be there for your teammate, put out a fire, and maybe that goal doesn't happen? Sure, a mistake, but maybe the goal doesn't happen. And when it does happen, the mental fortitude to turn the page, go on to the next, it's not easy. And he was brilliant. He was brilliant. I mean, I'm sitting here talking about how the U.S. men's national team could have won this game. Vinny Jr. had 3 chances by himself. Rodrigo had another chance. Endrick comes on and has a chance. There were point-blank opportunities against Matt Turner.
Richarlison had chances and he wasn't even playing.
It was that type of game, and he was there. I thought he was brilliant, and I absolutely think he needed it. And by the way, people are quick to forget. People are very quick to forget. Matt Turner was held as a hero and a historic figure in the World Cup with multiple shutouts, a record for a U.S. men's national team goalkeeper. You know, he has equity to his name. It's unfortunate what happened at the club level for him this year at Nottingham Forest, and he needs to sort that out. But it was imperative that he had a standout performance heading into a major tournament to give him that confidence.
Enough, though, about this theorising about things future. Let's be here now, like a footballing Ramdas, who I'd like to believe was a Costa Rica superfan in another life. But let us dive into the entirety of Group C, break down that full slate of United States games coming straight to your face over the next 10 days, beginning with the favourite team of all you Simon Bolivar stands out there. Oh, Bolivia. As previously mentioned, United States kicks off the tournament against those rough and tumble Bolivians Sunday, June 23rd, 6 p.m. Eastern Time at AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas, where I'm pretty sure Jerry Jones will be on hand to scout his next great Cowboy soccer signing after snagging Brandon Aubrey from Bethlehem Steel FC. I crap you not. Be on the lookout for Weston McKennie at tight end next season, Cowboys fans. But it must be said, Herc, Bolivia, not one of the stronger sides in this tournament. They'll be playing without the living legend of their squad, one Marcelo Moreno Martins, who played for Shakhtar Donetsk, Wigan Athletic, Werder Bremen, among many others in his long distinguished club career, and who announced his retirement from football this past year, walked away from the game as Bolivia's most ever capped player. Their all-time leading goal scorer, explaining he didn't want to play anymore without his father around to witness it, which I just admire and adore. So these Bolivians, they've all got big shoes to fill. They're also managed by a man with true footballing credentials, Antonio Carlos Zago, one-time centre-back for Roma, also been a former assistant at Shakhtar, managed seemingly pretty well every bloody club in Brazil. Herc, can a manager like Zago take a team like Bolivia and think about them going toe-to-toe with the United States? Or are they just going to sit in with a low block, dare us to break them down, and try and let us do ourselves in?
Pretty much. They will literally sit in, break us down if you can. We will try to be gritty. We will try to defend. Listen, Bolivia is a team that's competed in this competition, Raj. The last 9 editions, since 1999, 9 editions of Copa America, they have 1 win. If the U.S. men's national team can't break Bolivia down, can't beat Bolivia in U.S. soil. They have no business competing for a Copa America. It's that simple. Bolivia has a little bit of history in this tournament. They've actually won it once and were runners-up 1963 when they won it, and they were runners-up in 1997, both times in La Paz. That means they use the altitude to their favor, where they have a massive advantage. You're not in La Paz. You're not in Bolivia. They won't have that advantage. This is a team that's constructed primarily of domestic players that play in Bolivar. They should be nowhere at your level. You should be able to break them down comfortably and win this game comfortably. And I repeat, if the U.S. men's national team cannot beat Bolivia, cannot convincingly put them away, they're in trouble in this Copa America.
We should be thanking our lucky stars that those Bolivian high-altitude merchants aren't squaring off against our boys in Denver. But on to the next game. Game 2, we travel to the footballing mecca that is Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta, Georgia. And our Gen Zeagles take on CONCACAF foe, old friend Panama, Thursday, June 27th, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. But these are not your parents, Panamanians. They're a solid group of emerging talents that play in the world's greatest football league with soccer in the name. The Houston Dynamo's own 25-year-old Adalberto Carrasquilla, a.k.a. Coco. You may recognise him due to his afro that makes him look like a Panamanian Valderrama. A lot of clubs in Europe said to be looking at him. And in case you forgot, the US and Panama played a Gold Cup semi-final in 2023, went into the 98th minute tied 0-0 when good old Coco played a beautiful ball over the top of the US backline. The US had grabbed a goal back, only to have their hearts ripped out by the very same Coco on penalties. But this squad is so much more than just Carrasquilla. There's also right back Murillo, who plays for a little-known French club by the name of Marseille. The captain by Nashville striker Anibal Godoy, most capped player in the squad, brings some real veteran experience. This squad made the World Cup for the first time in 2018. Should make 2026. So Herc, I've got a sneaking suspicion, I don't know if you share it, I'm going to be sweating this game out. We all are, praying to gods I'm not even sure exist. Tell us, how scared should we be of this Panama side?
This is the most important game of your Copa America if you're the U.S. men's national team. You should comfortably take care of Bolivia, and thankfully the schedule is in your favor in terms of strength. So it goes from weakest opponent, Bolivia, Panama, Uruguay. Panama by far is the most important game that you have. If you're Gregg Berhalter, that's the one game that you have to win, because you expect to win Bolivia. You have to win against Panama, and I don't think it's going to be easy. If there is one nation in CONCACAF that has grown tremendously, it is Panama. With Thomas Christensen, their coach, the Spanish-Danish coach that they have, he's brought a sense of professionalism to this team in the way they play, whether it's a line of three with wing backs, how they attack you. You already mentioned some of the players. Jose Fajardo is a player that can score goals on you at any time. Bárcenas, another player who's very creative. He plays down in Liga MX. They have some quality to them, but they're very well coached. It's a very well coached team. If there's one team that I would say has grown the most in this region, it is Panama, which is why I was very surprised to see how they played against Mexico in the semifinal of the CONCACAF Nations League in Texas. It wasn't the Panama that I had grown accustomed to. It wasn't a Panama that, quite frankly, has given both the U.S. and Mexico fits in the last year. This will be Gregg Berhalter's biggest test, because you play against Uruguay, and we'll talk about Uruguay in a second. You lose to them, I don't think anybody's going to be surprised, because Uruguay is that good. But you lose to Panama, you've got the real possibility of getting grouped. You've got the real possibility of now going into a must-win game against what is arguably one of the best teams in South America at the moment. So while Panama may not have the names of the U.S. men's national team, I like the coach. They are very well coached, they are disciplined, and they make it very, very difficult to break down.
Oh my God, you've given me like a new fear. My whole life I've been very afraid of snakes, but now I think my greatest fear is the fear, Herc, of being grouped, especially the way you say it. It's just like so crude and violent and final. But finally, the moment we've all been waiting for, the straw that stirs Group C's Yerba Mate gourd. those hard-nosed, never-say-die Uruguayans. Our boys will take on the 15-time Copa America champs La Celeste at Arrowhead Stadium in Kansas City, Monday, July 1st at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Tournament schedule makers must have forgotten that Monday's a school night, but the story for Uruguay is that this is a side in transition, sunsetting on the old legends like Luis Suarez and Edinson Cavani, latter of whom announced his retirement from the national team just a couple of weeks ago. And heralding this new Uruguayan dawn is one of the great characters of modern football, Marcelo Bielsa. He of Leeds United, Argentina, Chile, and more. Bielsa, he's ruffled a few feathers in Uruguay with his attempts to resculpt the team's long-held identity of physical, all-in football, trying to change it into his high-flying Bielsa ball, which is so physically and mentally demanding. He's called up 14 previously uncapped players in his time at the Uruguayan helm, with some in the Uruguayan media calling this attempted restyling a madness, which is probably how Bielsa likes it. The results, though, they've been there, including wins against Argentina and Brazil, as well as a 4-0 dismantling of Mexico 2 weeks ago, while Bielsa watched on from his bucket. In addition to the tactics employed by Bielsa, this is a team littered with talent, led up top by human four loco and king of XG, Darwin Nunez, the yin to Michaela Mudrik's yang. Luis Suarez also still there, chomping at the bit, as ever, quite literally to take the field. Midfield star-studded. Federico Valverde, fresh off Champions League victory with Real Madrid. 23-year-old PSG wunderkind Manuel Ugarte. Tottenham staple Rodrigo Bentancur, filling out the back line. 6'4" Barcelona giant Ronald Araujo. Athletic Madrid stalwart, throat tattoo god Jose Maria Jimenez. I could go on and on. I'm now desperately afraid of being grouped. Herc, game plan aside, this is a formidable squad, a formidable manager, one of the rare opportunities our US boys will have to face really the global best in meaningful competition. Given this is a team undergoing transition, spearheaded by the mad scientist Bielsa himself, are we praying for growing pains under the bright Copa light, or is that just fanciful thinking?
This is a tricky one, because you have the benefit of the doubt of the schedule, because the weakness of the schedule, how it goes from weakest to strongest, you can go into this game knowing you just need to manage a result and you're on to the next.
Not grouped.
Not grouped. But you need to take care of the first two games. You need to leave all that out of somebody else's hands and put it into your hands, so you know that if you get a draw, if you get a certain score line, not only are you on to the next, but potentially you can win the group. You don't even need to beat Uruguay to win this group. You just need to manage the group. Now, you mentioned some of the players, ridiculous talent. It really is about this coach. You talked about the changing of the philosophy. They're still going to have that Uruguayan grit. It is insane to me that a country of a little over 3 million can produce so many top-level footballers and export them all around the world. You mentioned their European talent. They have a few Mexican players, a few players in Mexico. Maxi Araujo, who plays for Toluca. Sebastian Cáceres, who play for America. Who I guarantee you, come next summer, will be elsewhere. They will be on European teams, high-level talent. This is a team that will run you into the ground. They went into Argentina and beat the number one team in the world, Argentina, with Messi 2-0 in their own home. This is a formidable squad, and it's the way they play. They still have that same Uruguayan grit where any 50-50 ball, Raj, if it's your leg or my leg, it's not going to be my leg. I'll tell you that. That's the mentality of the Uruguayan.
It's going to be my leg,
It's that mentality with Bielsa's fingerprints. The high-flying, high-pressing, full volume, in-your-face football. I'm very curious to see Gregg Berhalter's approach in this game. Gregg Berhalter likes to cater tactical setups for different opponents. I don't know if he's ever seen an opponent or a system like Bielsa. It would be the closest thing to a Jesse Marsh versus Gregg Berhalter showdown as we can get. And I'm very eager to see what Gregg Berhalter will do, how he will combat that in-your-face press with the Uruguayan team that is gritty, that fights, and that has tons of talent. I mean, this team, as soon as they go through you, they will play through you as well. They are as talented as they can get, but they're very Route 1. They're very in your face and behind you, and they showed it versus Mexico. Out of the 4 goals they scored against Mexico, all 4 came in with getting in behind the fullbacks. They find very good ways of being fast, direct, and in behind you. If you can combat that, if you can make it a frustrating outing, you can manage this group and even win it if you're the U.S. men's national team.
I mean, I am between glory and doom just listening to this, and it is time for us to stare deep into our Common Bowl branded crystal ball, into a future where Dallas, Texas, Glendale, Arizona, and more are brimming with feverishly crazed football fans. We're going to pull out a prediction for this group of groups, the vaunted Group C. I've got to be honest, I've seen the script, Herc. I do know that the United States will win 1 game, then draw 1 game, and I think they'll lose 1 game. Can't tell you which of the teams they'll do that to, because that would be giving away too much of the script. But to make up for it, I'll share you on the down low one other piece of information I've gleaned. So listeners, cover your ears if you don't want spoilers. The USA will beat Saudi Arabia in the 2026 World Cup final. Just keep that one on the down low. But in this summer's Copa, Herkstradamus, you beautiful human being, what do you see happening in each of the US group stage matchups, and where will the US ultimately wind up in the group standings?
I see them beating Bolivia, multiple goals. I see them winning a closer than needed to be game against Panama and losing to Uruguay. That means they will go with 6 points in second place on to the next phase. And here's where it gets very tricky.
Let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. I'll talk about that in one quick second. But if you've got to choose one thing, I love this question because I'm not optimistic about anything in life. So I'm going to surf vicariously off yours. Herc, one thing that gives you most hope for this US team, what is it?
The individual talent, because that's what they've shown. They've still have yet to give us consistent performances as a group. But when you talk about the individual talent, how can you not get excited about a Christian Pulisic who's tearing it up in the Serie A? How can you not get excited, about a Haji Wright, a Josh Sargent if he's available, about the upside of a Farland Balogun, of the upside of a Ricardo Pepi, Gio Reyna, and how you mentioned before that certain players have used the U.S. men's national team as a refresher. We've seen Christian Pulisic do it. Gio Reyna, can he do it again? Weston McKennie, the best of Weston McKennie. Matt Turner, in official games, in tournament settings, how good he can be. A Tim Ream in his distribution. So when you look at the high-level ceilings of these players, that's what should get you excited.
It is the players. It is. They are quality. There is an ability to deliver wonder in our squad. And not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but let's get too far ahead of ourselves. Let's look beyond the group stage. What could possibly go wrong? We remain ungrouped. Let's call it wishful thinking here. But should this US men's national team make it out of the group stage intact, they will play either the winner or runner-up of Group D. And who's in Group D, you ask? Paraguay, Costa Rica, Colombia, and a little team called Brazil. That's right, dear listener, barring any colossal upsets, our boys are on a crash course for a matchup versus one of either Brazil or Colombia. In those quarterfinals, honestly, I'm old enough to remember when the United States played those teams in international friendlies, and we know how one of those games worked out, that Colombian catastrophe. Brazil, we held to a 1-1 victory that was, honestly, a wonder to watch, but it's got to be reiterated. Those were completely, utterly meaningless friendlies. So, Herc, if the United States end up either playing Brazil or Colombia, what type of shot do we have?
Here's where it gets tricky, Raj. Here's where it gets very tricky, because if you go in second place in your group, you're going to play against the first place team, which I think will be Colombia. And I think it'll be a lot closer than the 5-1 scoreline. But I do think Colombia, who right now is one of the hottest teams in the world, 22 straight wins, if I'm not mistaken. And for whatever reason, James Rodriguez, who is absolutely inspired when it comes to official, meaningful games with the Colombian national team, will eventually overcome any chance you have if you're a U.S. men's national team fan. But if it's Brazil, you've got a good opportunity. But it's only Brazil if you top the group. So it really depends if you can top this group. And that's the beautiful thing about this group and the way the schedule is formatted, that you don't have to beat Uruguay to win the group. You could still win this group without beating Uruguay, or maybe you beat Uruguay, but if you're first place in this group, your road to a semifinal is essentially easier, in theory, because of this Brazilian national team, because I don't believe in this Brazilian national team. Dorival Jr. and what they've done, I don't believe they are a good enough team, not individual players, to do some damage in this tournament. I do believe Colombia is a good team. We look at the Brazil roster and some of those players where they play, whether it's Real Madrid, whether it's PSG, whatever the teams may be that these Brazilians play on. Colombia don't have those players. Colombia has players who play in the professional top flight of Brazil. They've got players who play in Russia. They've got players who play in Liga MX. Camilo, their goalkeeper, Camilo Vargas. But they're a better team. If you can make it out of your group as first place and play Brazil, I think you've got a good shot. If you're playing Colombia, I think that's the end of the road.
What's the next stage of being grouped? We dodged the grouping.
It's very easy to say semifinal should be the goal. That's a very easy.
That's what I was going to ask you. I think I'm not sure I'm allowed to say this on radio that we be semied. I'm not sure if that's.
I don't think that just sounds dirty.
I know it all does. It all does. I don't want to be grouped. I don't know what it means, but I don't want it. But I mean, you're hinting towards I guess the biggest question for all of us right now, and it's a complicated one. What constitutes success for these boys in this tournament, given everything we just laid out here? What is the absolute minimum that this team can do to set themselves up as a success heading into 2026 intact?
Well, that's what I think the great thing about this group is, that these players won't be satisfied, and I don't think Gregg Berhalter will be satisfied and call it a success if they get to quarters and bow out. I think many people would say it's a success if you get to a semifinal. I don't know if these players will think that. Christian Pulisic has been to a semifinal of the Copa America. He was on the U.S. men's national team when they lost 4-0 to Argentina. I don't think they would say it's a success. You're on home soil. These players want to do something special in 2026. So if you can't do it with this field of teams, how are you going to do it when the Frances of the world are here? How are you going to do it when the Germanys, the Italys, the Portugals of the world are here? I think these players want more. I don't think I see more in their future in this tournament if they can't be first place in that group. We spoke about the margins of the 2002 team and how thin those margins were from success to failure. It really is about those margins. So while it's very easy for me to say semifinals would be a success, I don't think that's what these players would say.
It is critical to me. I totally agree that ultimately we can't just get out of the group. We have to. We have to win a knockout game if we're going to prove ourselves to ourselves that we can take the field against a good team, a non-CONCACAF good team, and believe we can win. We need to, and then we need to go out and do just that, right?
You do, because you've never had such a talented field of players in your history, and you've never had the two greatest opportunities of doing something, which are home tournaments. This is a Copa America, but it is your tournament. It's on home soil. It is a World Cup, but it's your tournament. It is on home soil. The stars have aligned where if you ever had a chance of doing something special, it is now.
Do it. I mean, God, we have hopes, we have dreams, we desire like the greater, wider American sporting public, the curious American sports fans who fall in love with this team as we are. This is such an important month for this team to try and make that happen. Herc, thank you for your wisdom, your endless football knowledge. You can listen to Herc and me break down groups B and D in part 3 of this 3-part series. You can also check out my quite remarkable sit down with the best thing out of Wisconsin since New Glorious Spotted Cows. It's Canada men's national team coach Jesse Marsh, where we break down everything you need to know about Group A, which includes Argentina and Lionel Messi. Check your pod feed for those. Herc, I know you're going to be a busy man the next month, co-hosting Football Americas with special editions on match days on ESPN+. You're going to be hanging out with me in LA, June 19th at El Rey Theatre to talk with Brendan Hunt. Come be with us, listeners. Come raise a glass with us. I can't wait to be with you in person, Herc. This whole time we've been working together, I have not raised a pint with you in person.
I can't wait. There's an ultra waiting for you when you get to Los Angeles, my friend. It's been a long time, too long since I've seen you in person, so it's going to be extra special.
Godspeed to you. In the meantime, to the Copa, to our Gen Zeagles, to the final in Miami. We can dream. Courage.